Mia had hired the guard for one reason only: peace. A widowed consultant with a mountain of secrets and a city that never slept, she craved the kind of silence that money could buy. Her new bodyguard, they'd said, would be retired, discreet, bulletproof. She pictured a tall man in a plain suit, maybe a little soft around the edges, who would stand outside her penthouse door like a statue and let her nightmares stay nightmares. She was wrong. The elevator doors opened at 2:17 a.m. on a humid Thursday, and what stepped out wasn't a bodyguard. It was a thing that had once been a man. His skin was the color of old bronze, stretched tight over a frame that looked like it had been carved from living obsidian and then dipped in starfire. Two black horns, each as thick as a sapling, curved backward from his temples, their tips glowing with a faint violet light that made the hallway shadows flinch. His eyes were molten gold slits that reflected every camera in the lobby like twin suns. Clawed fingers tapped a rhythm on the hilt of a longsword that probably weighed more than she did. The scent rolling off him was smoke and ozone and something ancient that made her knees want to buckle. "Ms. Hale," the thing said, voice like gravel soaked in whiskey. "Captain Riven. You hired me for quiet. I won't disappoint you." She laughed once, a brittle sound that cracked the silence. "Quiet? You're not even wearing shoes." His mouth, too many teeth, sharp and white, curved into something that might have been a smile. "No. I'm not. But I'll be fast enough." He moved past her without waiting for instructions, boots silent despite their size. The hallway lights dimmed when he passed, as if afraid to witness the creature that had just volunteered to protect the one woman who had no idea what she'd signed up for. Mia followed, heart hammering against her ribs, because something inside her, something that had never been there before, recognized the predator and the prey in the same breath. The elevator closed behind them with a soft chime. Riven stood 3 feet away, massive and impossible, and yet he didn't crowd her. He simply waited, head tilted, golden eyes tracking every twitch of her shoulders like he was memorizing the shape of her fear. "You're not human," she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "No," he answered, calm as still water. "Not anymore. The job pays well, and the city's been kind to me lately. Mostly." The elevator rose in silence broken only by the soft sigh of the air vents. Mia's reflection in the polished metal showed her pale face, dark circles, the faint tremor at the corners of her mouth. She looked small. Fragile. Nothing like the woman who had built an empire on secrets and now lived inside a glass box watching the world through bulletproof glass. Riven's claws flexed once, a soft metallic click against the hilt. "You're expecting the usual suit, no questions, maybe a nod if you drop something." "I can do that." She swallowed. "And if I don't?" His laugh was low, almost gentle. "Then I'll still be here. But I won't pretend I'm not listening to every heartbeat in this building. Including yours." The doors slid open on the penthouse floor. The corridor stretched long and empty, polished marble underfoot, city lights glittering beyond the glass walls like scattered diamonds. Mia's pulse roared in her ears. She could feel the weight of his presence pressing against her spine, warm and alive and terrifyingly close. Riven stopped at her door, turned, and looked down at her with those burning eyes that held entire galaxies. "First rule," he said softly, voice dropping into the register that made her stomach tighten, "is that nothing gets in. Ever. Not even the dark you've been running from. I'll mark the perimeter. I'll taste the air. I'll make sure your nightmares learn to dream somewhere else." She stood there, keys trembling in her hand, and for the first time in years the silence felt different. Not empty. Not safe. Charged. Alive. Riven took one step closer. The horns caught the corridor lights and fractured them into violet shards that danced across her face. "Second rule," he murmured, "is that I don't sleep much. But when I do, I'll stand right here." Outside that door. If something tries to come for you, I'll make it regret the day it was born. Mia's breath hitched. She should have been terrified. Instead her body remembered things it shouldn't. The way her skin had felt alive under his gaze, the strange pull low in her belly that had nothing to do with fear. She shoved the thought down hard. "You're not like the others," she whispered. "No," he agreed. "The others were replaceable. I'm not." She unlocked the door. The moment it swung open, Riven was inside before her, scanning every shadow, every corner, every possible hiding place with a single fluid motion. His claws left faint scratches on the floor that glowed violet for a heartbeat and then faded. The air itself seemed to thin, as if the room had been holding its breath. He turned to her, chest rising and falling in slow, deliberate breaths. Third rule. You're not alone anymore. Not really. I don't care about your secrets. But I care about what's left of you. So you tell me nothing. I protect everything. Clear? She nodded, throat too tight to speak. The words wouldn't come. Instead she watched him circle the room like a storm-given form, checking windows, testing locks, the sword now drawn and resting lightly against his thigh. The blade was black as midnight, etched with runes that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. When he finished, he faced her again. The penthouse was suddenly too small. The city outside was suddenly too loud. And Riven, Captain Riven, the thing that had once worn a man's face, was looking at her like she was the only thing in the world worth keeping. "You're shaking," he said. "I'm not." "You are." He took one step, then another, until the heat of him brushed her skin. "Tell me what you're afraid of, Mia. Or don't. But if you ever feel it rising, I'll be here. I won't blink. I won't flinch. I'll just make it stop." Her eyes stung. She hadn't cried since the funeral. Not once. But something inside her cracked open now, raw and bleeding. "You're not supposed to look at me like that," she whispered. "Like what?" Like I'm yours to save." His golden eyes softened, just a fraction, but she saw it. "They are. Every heartbeat. Every breath. Every nightmare you hide behind those walls. They're mine now. I hired myself out. I don't do refunds." A low rumble built in the distance, sirens, far away, but growing. Riven's head snapped toward the window. His tail, long, black, tipped with spikes, lashed once, twice. The horns flared brighter. "Too slow," he muttered. "I could have ended it before it even left the ground." Mia spun to the glass. Below, a black drone hovered, its surface crawling with insectal shapes. Armed men in exosuits spilled out, weapons raised. The leader's voice crackled through a speaker she hadn't known existed. "Ms. Hale. You have 10 seconds to surrender the data or we burn the building down with you inside." Riven moved. He was at the window in a heartbeat, one massive clawed hand slamming it open. The wind howled in, carrying the metallic tang of gun oil and fear. His wings, vast, leathery, edged in silver, snapped out behind him with a sound like tearing canvas. The horns blazed violet so bright the entire corridor lit up. He stepped onto the balcony railing as if it were solid ground. Behind him, the drone's weapons opened fire. Bullets sparked off his chest and bounced away like rain on a window. "Run," he told her, voice calm as ever. "Inside. Lock the doors. I'll handle them." She didn't move. The words died in her throat. Because this wasn't a monster. This was her monster. The one who had chosen her when the world hadn't. Riven's head turned, just enough for her to see the gold in his eyes soften again. "Mia. Inside." She finally moved. But not to obey. She grabbed his arm, thick as a tree trunk, scales rough and warm beneath the bronze skin. The moment her fingers touched him, a spark jumped between them, electric and bright and something she had no name for. "You're not leaving," she said, voice shaking but steady. His gaze dropped to their joined hands, then back to her face. The battle raged outside now, boots pounding the balcony floor, men screaming as Riven's claws tore through armor like paper. Blood, dark, almost black, sprayed across the marble. "I hired myself out," he repeated, but there was a new note in his voice. Something almost tender. "For you. Not the data. Not the money. For you." The leader reached the balcony edge, rifle aimed. Last chance, freak. Riven's wings flared. The horns went supernova violet. For one terrifying second Mia saw the thing that had been born inside him, ancient, merciless, beautiful. Then he moved. He was faster than thought. One sweep of his arm and the leader's rifle flew away. The next, claws raked down the man's chest, opening him like a book. The others died in a blur of black wings and golden eyes and the wet sound of steel finding flesh. When it was over, Riven stood panting in the center of the carnage, chest heaving, wings slowly folding. Blood, his blood, Mia realized, coated his horns and dripped from his claws. He looked up at her, and the violet glow in his eyes had faded to embers. "You're still shaking," he said. "I'm not. You are." He crossed the distance in 3 strides and pulled her against his chest. The embrace was gentle despite the blood. Warm. Solid. Alive. "But you're still here. Still breathing. Still mine." Mia clung to him, face buried in the rough scales of his neck. She should have been terrified. Instead she felt something terrifyingly close to peace. "I expected a quiet bodyguard," she whispered against his skin. "I know." His voice rumbled through her bones. "But I'm not quiet. I'm yours. All of me. Every shadow. Every roar. Every night I don't sleep so you can." Outside, the city sirens finally reached them, but the sound was distant, muffled by Riven's presence. Inside, the penthouse felt smaller, safer, warmer than it ever had. He pulled back just enough to cup her face with one enormous hand. His thumb brushed her cheek, leaving a faint streak of blood that glowed violet for a moment before fading. "Rule 4, he said, soft as a promise, "is that I don't leave. Not ever. Not unless you tell me to. And even then, I'll make you come back for me." Mia laughed then, a real laugh, wet and shaky and full of something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Wild, reckless, impossible hope. She stood on her toes, way on her toes, and pressed her forehead to his. "You're impossible." "So are you," he answered, horns casting violet shadows across her face. "Because you hired me. You chose me. You looked at this," he gestured at himself, "the blood, the carnage, the monster, and you didn't run." "I didn't know what you were," she said. "No. But you felt it. The same thing I feel every time I look at you. The thing that says you're the only thing worth protecting in this entire rotten universe." The last of the men outside cried out once, then fell silent. Riven's wings retracted. The horns dimmed. The blood on the floor began to steam and vanish, as if the city itself wanted to forget the battle ever happened. He carried her inside without asking, set her on the couch, and then knelt. On one knee, impossibly graceful for a creature his size, before her. "Sleep," he said. "I'll stand watch. Always." She reached out, threaded her fingers through the coarse hair at the base of his horns. They were warm. Pulsing. Alive. "Stay," she whispered. He closed his eyes, a deep rumble of contentment rolling through his chest. I'm staying. For you. Forever if you want it. Mia closed her own eyes, the city's roar now only a distant lullaby. For the first time in years, she felt safe. Not because the world was quiet, but because the quiet was wrapped around her in the arms of something ancient and fierce and utterly, completely hers. And somewhere in the dark between heartbeats, she heard him whisper, I hired myself out. But I keep myself. Because you're worth every scar. Every blood drop. Every second of eternity I get to spend making sure no one ever hurts you again. The penthouse fell silent except for their breathing. Outside, the city slept. Inside, a monster and a woman who had no idea what she'd signed up for held each other in the only way that mattered. She had expected a quiet bodyguard. She had not expected a monster who looked at her like she was the only light left in the universe. And for the first time in years, Mia felt the first real shiver of something dangerously close to home.